Greetings, everyone. We are so excited that you are here. We are going to get started in just about 2 minutes, just giving folks a chance to get into the room. Very happy to have you here. We will be starting momentarily. Good afternoon and welcome to our medicine and the law session. I'm so excited about this session. I'm so excited to have everyone here. My name is Nicole McLaren Campbell. I am the founder of AIM Online Academy, and this is just a great pleasure for us. Can we get started with everyone telling us in the room where they are joining us from? I always think it's such an incredible way to connect when we're here on Zoom, because it's always so interesting how many different places everybody is coming in from. So can we start with everybody just dropping in the chat which city they're joining us from today? Wow, this is quite a diverse group that we have here. I don't know if I've mentioned before, but I was actually born in the wonderful country of Barbados. So I want to welcome all our parents and students coming to us from Barbados. A big welcome. Of course, Jamaica, where AIM is based. We have participants joining us from, because there are students and parents in this room. So there's Mandeville, there's Kingston, there's Montego Bay, Port Moore, Clarendon, Spanish Town, that's also Westmoreland, St. James. We have our United States crew. I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, how many of the parents and students here who are joining us from the US, I'm talking about Atlanta, Georgia, Connecticut, Alaska. How many of you are part of the Jamaican diaspora or the Caribbean diaspora? I would love to hear that, just for our interest purposes. All right, we have a few, and then of course we have Toronto, Canada. We always have Toronto, Canada in the building, and we're excited to see you. So this is an exciting session, and I'm just gonna make sure we dive right into it because I know we have our panelists here, Sophie, who is joining us all the way from the UK. And I promised her that we would keep the session super tight to make sure that she can get to bed and get to class very early tomorrow. So let me share my screen. I want to talk to you a little bit about the why for today's session. So today's session, we really have organized really in response to the needs of our students and parents. Having been advising and coaching students for the past 14 years at AIM, we're really seeing where the world has changed. Students can really start taking action earlier on their interests. They really need a sense of direction, while it's never, I think, fair to ask a 13, 14-year-old to decide on their lifelong career path. It really is important for our students to start thinking about the things that they might be interested in and begin to pursue those, and knowledge really is power in this space. And so you've known AIM all this time for our work in advising students on primarily US, UK, and Canadian universities, and then helping them to do the SATs and build out those profiles to make those applications successful. Well, the aim that you will now get to know really is focusing on supporting students through getting to know themselves, finding successful pathways, and figuring out what their interests and purpose are so that they can pursue and build careers that will not just be lucrative, but will also bring them a sense of fulfillment. I think that is so important moving forward, that we combine what they're really good at with their sense of fulfillment, because in a world where AI is gaining ground as we speak, you will never go wrong if you are genuinely called for an area, and if you can really bring a unique value proposition. And so we need to just retool our kids, and we as parents have to start thinking a bit differently. And so that's why we're here. So very excited to be here in this session. I'm going to hand over to Janelle, where Janelle is going to introduce our panel, and just we're gonna jump right into the session. My screen is now being shared so you can get a sense of what our agenda is. I have just completed the introduction in case you are wondering where we are in the program. So I'll ask Janelle to take over here and introduce our panel and get the show on the road.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle Brown, as Ms. Campbell said, and I'm the administrative manager here at AIM. I just want to thank everyone again for joining us today, all our panelists, as well as everyone who is attending. These are really important discussions for students who are interested in med and law, so we're really excited to get started. And we have a very diverse and esteemed panel with us here today. Today we have Mr. Craig Francis, who is a commissioned land surveyor, whose commitment to education led him to navigate the complex process of enrolling his daughter in a medical program in Cuba. overcoming significant financial and logistical barriers. This journey, or his personal journey, inspired him to establish Jam to Cuba Studies, which is an organization dedicated to helping students access affordable medical education in Cuba. His initiative reflects a deep desire to break down financial obstacles to medical education, making it more accessible for aspiring doctors. We also have Chelsea Goff. Chelsea is a Johns Hopkins University alumna with degrees in public health studies and mental health. She transitioned from a pre-med pathway to a career focused on public health and health equity. Her work with AI and machine learning projects at the NIH aims to increase health accessibility for minorities. Chelsea's teaching and research experiences have fostered her passion for mentoring students, particularly in communicating complex ideas and exploring diverse career paths in health beyond traditional medical roles. We also have Sophie Stewart. Sophie Stewart's academic journey from Georgetown School of Foreign Service, majoring in culture and politics, to pursuing law at the University of Exeter highlights the interdisciplinary nature of legal education. Her path, enriched by international scholarships and articulating experiences, underscores the versatility of legal training and its applicability across global contexts, preparing her for a diverse legal career with international dimensions. We also have Hallie King. Hallie originally considered law as one among many options. She embraced the legal profession after starting her studies at the University of West Indies. Her journey from law school to the bar and her transition from private practice to a legal officer role at NEPA exemplify the very career paths with the legal field and profound commitment required to succeed in law. We also have Dr. Joshua Wright. Dr. Wright's remarkable achievement in securing a spot in Duke University Hospital's ENT residency program as one of the few international medical graduates highlights the challenges and triumphs of pursuing a medical career on an international stage. His journey emphasizes the importance of determination, excellence, and strategic preparation for students aiming to break into competitive medical specialties abroad. And finally, we have Dr. Matthew Preston, who is the co-CEO and principal of ACE Academy.
We'd like to apologize for this slide which says Mr. Excuse me. It is Dr. Matthew Preston, and this is a serious degree to train for. So this is no disrespect to you, Dr. Matthew Preston. Okay.
Dr. Preston is transforming medical education in the Caribbean through innovative USMLE exam prep courses. His work, coupled with his role as a co-host of the Limitless podcast, positions him as a key influencer in medical education, advocating for adaptive learning strategies and success in the medical arena. So we're really excited to get started and to hear what each of our panelists have to say this evening. So as Mrs. Campbell indicated, we'll be starting with Sophie Stewart. Sophie, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And Nicole, thank you for letting me go first.
Thank you so much for joining us from Exeter today, right?
Yes.
Okay, University of Exeter. I do want to mention, key part of Sophie's bio is that she was an aimer. So she was an aimer for her undergraduate, which she did at Georgetown, as well as we advised her on her graduate school studies. So over to you, Janelle.
All right, Sophie. So jumping in, transitioning from international relations to law is a pretty significant shift, especially after a 4-year degree program in the US. So how did you know this was the right fit for you? How did you know that this was the right decision at the time?
I think, well, I had always been thinking about doing law. But what happened, I'd been to boarding school in the US and then did my undergrad at Georgetown. And up to about, I'd say halfway through Georgetown, I was still thinking maybe I'll do law school in the US. And about halfway through is when COVID happened. And when I was thinking about it more seriously, I was realizing that I'm not a US citizen, but I am a British one, that I was realizing that being on a visa for the rest of my life would get really tricky. And if I studied in the US, it's a lot harder to move home and practice law in Jamaica than it is if you have an English degree. So I would say that was my main consideration in moving to the UK. I didn't find the switch from international relations to law that difficult. I mean, we have some people in my program who did bio and psychology, which I think would be a harder change. Because I had managed to take at Georgetown like a couple of law related like elective classes. So I'd kind of gotten a taste of it. And also international relations is also very writing heavy, which has been helpful. I would say the main change is that the writing they expect, I think, in law is a lot more concise than I was used to. I don't write papers the length that I used to write at Georgetown anymore. They're a lot shorter. So they expect you to be very concise with your word count.
All right. So what would you say was the what has your experience been like? What was the best part or the hardest part? And what advice would you give to high school students considering law now?
I would say one of the hardest parts was knowing like where to start, which this is where Aim and Nicole were really, really helpful because by the time I got to my last year at Georgetown, I knew definitely I wouldn't be applying to school in the US, but I wasn't totally sure because I'd done my undergrad in the US, I wasn't totally sure where I would be able to start from in the UK and what the best option was. There are a lot of if you've done a first undergrad in a non-law subject, there are a lot of options, but they kind of changed recently, like they changed the qualifying exam. Um, and what I ended up doing was the graduate LLB, which is a 2-year undergraduate instead of three. But there are also 1-year conversion courses, and I think the hardest thing was trying to figure out the right path. And I think the best thing there well, one is just doing a lot of research, and this again is where Aim and Nicole came in. You guys definitely took on a lot of that research for me. But I think one is doing a lot of research, and two is talking to as many people as you can. I feel like I was trying to speak to anyone who I knew who was a lawyer, and like trying to see what they were saying about the best route to take and what I don't know. Yeah, I think trying to talk to as many people as you can and see what they think and what they're studying. So I think that's my advice is like to do as much research as you can and try to talk to people. And then even in high school, I had done a couple of internships with a law firm in Jamaica. Nothing serious, just like a couple weeks over the summer, for maybe 2 summers in high school. Um, so I think like if anything like that is possible, like just trying to get a taste for it.
All right. And looking back at your journey, is there anything that you would have changed? Like, would you have just gone straight to law school in the UK?
You know, it's something I think about a lot actually, because when I don't know if it says it in the bio, but I was applying for a scholarship program at a firm in Cayman, and the scholarship program is open to like all levels of applicants. So I was kind of in the same running as people who were, when I was 22, who were 18, having just about to go into their first year of law school, and I was about to go into my fifth year of university. And so it was something that I was kind of on my mind. And when I'd spoken with the committee after being offered the job, saying it had been something that was on my mind, and they had said in the end worked out okay, the longer path, because yes, I was up against 18-year-olds and I was 22, but it was also 4 extra years and of it, you know, gaining experience and becoming a better student. And I think in the end too, I really enjoyed my undergrad. And I made, you know, made a lot of good friends and like I think it did make me a better student, and so I felt better prepared to start my law degree. Um, I mean, there are tons of other considerations. Obviously, it's 4 years of paying a lot more tuition than you are in the UK. Um, but I do kind of think our professors have told us, and my program is really small, it's only 20 of us, which I find really helpful compared to if I'd come here as an undergrad to start out with when I was 18. All of my classes would have been huge lectures, and I know personally I don't cope with that well. And our professors have said that our writing tends to be a bit like at a higher standard than most of the undergraduates who are 18, just because I mean, we've all had 4 more years of school. So in the end, although like I'm now going to be, by the time I'm like fully qualified, like 28, which is definitely later than a lot of people, I don't think I regret it.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Wait, we have one last question I want to sneak in there. Thank you for these powerful insights. Um, one question, if when you're in the UK, you can either choose to become a solicitor or a barrister after studying. Can you explain to us a little bit about what those paths mean and why you chose solicitor?
Yeah. Um, so a barrister goes to court. Um, and a solicitor is mostly transactional. I think in some cases solicitors do go to court, but I think generally the difference is like, well, one in the UK, you go to different qualifying school. For a barrister, you do a barrister's training course, and a solicitor, you do the solicitor's qualifying exam. But I think the other thing is that for a solicitor, you generally have better job security, I think. Although I didn't look into it too much because I knew from the beginning I never wanted to do litigation. Um, but barristers were one of the groups of people who were protesting in the UK a couple years ago for higher salaries. I think it's harder for them. You don't often get a contract with a firm the way as a solicitor you like almost always do. Um, so I think the job security is better if you're a is better if you're a solicitor, but you have the potential for really high earnings if you become a really good barrister. Um, but in the end, the distinction wasn't too important for me because in Cayman, where I'm signed on to work afterwards, I think in Jamaica as well, there's no distinction. You're just an
Yes,
attorney
in
at law.
Jamaica, there's no distinction.
Yeah. So in the end, the distinction didn't end up being hugely important for me, except if I had wanted to go into litigation, I'd have probably done next year I'll be doing the solicitor's qualifying exam. And if I wanted to go into litigation, I would probably have just done the barrister's training course. I think would be the main difference.
Right. And last but not least, how long did it take you to prep for, or is it going to take you to prep for the solicitor's qualifying exam, which is like being called to the bar, right? How long does that take?
It's quite a process. Well, it's not you. So you enroll, there are a couple schools that do it in the UK called BPP and University of Law, and basically they have campuses everywhere. And so you enroll, so they changed the solicitor's qualifying exam is new. They brought it in 2 years ago. And so you enroll in a course. Usually, I think you can take it without enrolling in a course, but the pass rates for that are really bad. Um, and so there's one set of exams in the course in January and one set in April. And so you enroll in a course and do like classes, and I'm going to do it with a combined master's as well. So that will take 12 months. And I think if you've done it without the combined master's, it's 10. Um, so I felt like that wasn't a huge difference. But yeah, it's two big sets of exams, one in January, one in April, and you have to pass both.
Mm.
So I think if you fail the SQE1 in January, they'll still let you take the SQE2 in April, but then you'll have to retake the one in the next January.
Yeah, not so fun. Okay, well, thank you so much. You've given us a great sense of what it would be like to go to the US, do an undergrad, then, sort of figure it out. Did you, do you think you knew enough to go directly into law in retrospect? Not that you would have done it or not, because you described that, but do you think you had enough assurance at 18 to go directly into a law program?
I probably could have, but I think what would have been more, I think classes wise, I could have handled it. I felt after my high school, I was prepared for Georgetown. I'm sure I would have been also prepared to do law. I think the part that would have been more difficult is motivating the career part. I think at 22, it's a lot easier to feel I need to get a job, I need to get a contract than it is at 18 to feel that. And especially in London, um I have friends who've been doing it this year and last year. The application process for jobs here is really, really competitive. And I
Right.
think that is the part that would have gotten to me at 18. But all of that can be overcome. I mean, if you have the right
So just to
motivation,
get
have
it
the right
straight,
people.
you are gonna be working in Cayman and you're not engaging in the whole application job process in the UK.
No.
Okay, because that is an option. Yeah.
Yes,
If you
that
want
is an
to,
option.
you have to do the work experience there,
Yeah.
but you need work experience to be called to the bar in the UK.
Yeah. So how you do, so you do the qualifying exams and then you have 2 years of, they call it a training
Yes.
contract in the
All
UK,
right,
but
people
in
live Jordan.
Cayman and I think in Jamaica they call it articling.
Right,
And after
absolutely.
that is when you're officially called to the bar.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, great. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you have to get to bed being over there in the UK, and all our panelists are like very winning, and that means they have lots of things to do. So Janelle is gonna move us right along. Sophie, can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you again. Good
Take
night.
care. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next we're going to move on to someone in the medical field. We're going to start with Dr. Joshua Wright. Dr. Wright, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right, so to jump right in, your journey to securing a residency in a really competitive field of ENT as an international medical graduate is really inspiring. Like, what advice do you have for students aiming to pursue medical careers, particularly in specialties?
Yes, so I think Sophie touched on this earlier as well. I think especially at the high school level where most of the people here are listening from, I think having exposure is very important. I think any of these career paths, both med and law, it's very tedious, very long, a lot of hard work. And I think you definitely need to know what you're getting yourself into from early. I think especially just in general medicine, the first step to become a specialist, you have to do medicine first. So sometimes what happens to people, they focus more on a specialty and they forget they have to get through all of medical school first. We have to do stuff that you're not interested in. So I think first you have to, love medicine and then also, have an interest to specialties. I think also it's very important to have a very open mind when you're going into medicine. I think personally for me, I never knew I wanted to do ENT until after medical school. So throughout medical school, I was interested in other specialties. And it's only through that exposure in medical school when I finally decided, yep, ENT is for me. So I think in general, just going into medicine with an open mind of what you want to do afterwards. And also just get the exposures from high school. Currently, especially the competitive students in America, they're getting a lot of exposures from high school level. They're, volunteering at hospitals, they're going to these different clinics and stuff like that to get the exposure, and that helps with their resumes. And, like Sophie mentioned as well, just speak to a lot of people who are in the field, tell them the whole path. I remember when I first was interested in this path, I spoke to someone I was interested in, who had a similar path, and he said it's going to be around 10 years I took for him, and I freaked out from that. And right now I'm in the process for 11 years and I have 6 more years left to go. So, it's good to just speak to people, know what the full path, know the full pathway from start to finish. And just be prepared of what you're getting into, and also be open-minded for a pivot at one point in that pathway.
Okay. So was it always
Founders privileges and intervene here because that 17-year remark has my mind blown. Dr. Wright, thank you for being here. Could you break down for me and all of our parents and students here the timeline, the different, because I know you have to repeat residency, I think, once you go to the US. Just break down the time it would have taken if you had stayed in Jamaica for the whole thing or versus the path you're now taking. Tell us from you leave high school, just break down the timelines.
Sure. So I graduated high school in 2013, so that's 11 years ago. In Jamaica, you can go straight into medical school, which is different from America. In Jamaica, medical school is 5 years, so I graduated 2018. So in Jamaica, you have to do 2 years of it's pretty much mandatory work. It's called internship. What you kind of have to do that in order to be fully licensed, but you're actually working as a doctor, you're getting paid. So those are 2 years. So it's 5 years plus those 2 years. And then you can start residency in Jamaica. Residency pretty much means to specialize. So I finished those 2 years around 2020, and then I could have started residency in Jamaica immediately. But I decided to go to the States. And when you have to go to the States, since their system is different, usually there's like a delay to get to the States. So that delay for me has been 4 years now, partly because you have to do some exams called the USMLEs, which is the US medical licensing exams. You have to do that. Additionally, for me as well, I've been working in research for going on 3 years now to help my resume, to help me get into residency, which is a very normal thing. A lot of people do research years to get into to specialize, or even during medical school, they do research years. So now I've gotten into residency. I'm going to be starting in July, and my ENT, the residency program is 5 years long. Other residency programs are shorter, like, there's some that are 3 years, but any surgical specialty is like 5 years long. And then if you want to subspecialize after that, it could be 1 to 2 years after that. So I have 5 years of residency and then 1 to 2 years of fellowship after that for me to finish, quote unquote, studying. If I want to do stuff in between, that might be a different story, but right now, that's my goal right now. So it adds up to many, many years.
Okay. Well, I mean, as you said, I mean, this is a lot. This takes an incredible level of commitment. Did you always know that this was the right fit for you? And if yes, how did you know?
Sure. So definitely medicine throughout high school. I never fully knew medicine was the right fit for me. Honestly, I didn't think I was could get into medicine when I was in high school. I had different, passions. So at one point I want to be a lawyer. At one point I'm still interested in culinary arts, hoping to, go to culinary art school one day in the future if I have time. But yeah, it wasn't until, around fifth form or so when I said, okay, I'm really interested in medicine. And then sixth form, I really cemented it because you kind of have to decide by sixth form of what you could do with your life. So yeah, I went in medicine, but at that point, I never knew which specialty. I never knew, I just wanted to get in medical school and see what happens there. And like I said, I only decided on going to the States and doing ENT after medical school and after I got to do those 2 years of work. So yeah, that's kind of the process of my decision in that.
Have you ever questioned your decision in the hard nights when you look on it and say, my God, 17 years, was this the right path? Like when it really hits and gets hard, have you ever questioned it?
Sure, like every day. But obviously there's points where you question it more than others. Like I think one of the things that someone that I should mention, like having mentors and having someone to tell you the path is very useful. And one of the things that someone told me is that in medicine, there's so many steps and you need to be okay with each new step that you take if you want to stop at that point, because there's so many points you could stop. So after medical school in Jamaica, I could have stopped after 5 years, after do those 2 years, and I could just be practicing right now and, stop the journey. So at each of those points where you have to, you reach a crossroads where you have to decide, okay, take the next step, which is, many, many years or stay. And even after you take the next step, I matched into residency like 2 weeks ago. These 4 years of trying to match into residency every day, I'm seeing other people my age who are working, living their life, getting married, buying houses, doing, things that people my age should be doing. And here I'm studying, and trying to get into a career. So yeah, you definitely think about it. And also it's, having backup plans, you kind of always have to somewhat have a backup plan. Going into ENT for residency, many years is like a 0 to 1% chance. So I am international graduate will get in. Many times people told me it was going to be impossible. Up to last year when I was getting ready to apply, someone told me maybe I should consider going back to medical school in America or just pivoting a totally different route to reach ENT. And then you always have to just question, okay, is that worth it? What should I do? And in a way, you kind of have to just, close your eyes and just push through, because if you just kind of look at all the reasons why you can't or all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing this, you start seeing your bills being, that's the next thing. Medical school is very expensive, especially in the States and everything. And, you're not working the money that people talk about, oh, medicine and doctors will make a lot of money. You're not doing that for many years. So yeah, there's many times and seeing all the factors, it really, you question it a lot, and you just kind of have to push through. And also if you decide to quit or not quit, but change or pivot, don't beat yourself up on that. Many people have to do that. A lot of people don't decide not to do medicine, go into different paths, and it's totally okay. Even if you've invested 10 years, it's totally okay to pivot. And I think that's just a life lesson. Like no matter how much time you've invested, it's always okay to pivot and go into a different direction. And don't let anyone say, oh, that was bad, or you shouldn't have done that because you put so much time into it. That's totally okay if that happens to you.
Okay. First of all, congratulations on being matched to your residency program. So what would you say are the main factors to consider? Like, what are the pros and cons that you would share with someone?
Yeah, so in general, pros, it's hard to think. Yeah, there are pros. I think, well, one of it, which I think that's just the pro for me, I know that I'm doing what I absolutely love. I knew that there was no way I could ever do a career that I did not absolutely love. I knew from early in my life what kind of career, what type of lifestyle I wanted to do. So that alone, it's, working for me. Other things as well. Also, medicine's a bit different, and I'm not sure about other career fields, but after medical school, once you're doing residency, you're kind of getting paid. So, at least you're studying, but you're getting paid at the same time. And actually, for a residency, you're not paying to study doing residency. They're actually paying you to work doing residency. So it's a little bit different, just the structure of it as well. So although it's like, 17 years, half of the time you're being paid. So it's not like 17 years where you're living as a student. Other pros as well, at the end of the day, theoretically, and I don't think people should ever make that decision, based on like finances and everything, but theoretically at the end of the day, especially it depends on which field you go into, there could be a big payday at the end of it, but that shouldn't be part of the big decision early on. Cons, it takes a very long time, like I said, very expensive, especially medical school. That's one of the reasons I stayed at UE, because medical school, the process in America is much, much more expensive. Even if I went the American route where you have to do undergrad, I probably would have had a similar timeline. A lot of my friends who went the American route, they're matching up at the same time as me. But they have a lot of expenses. A lot of them have student loans that they could be paying off for many, many years. I'm lucky since I went to UE and I got a bursary there. I don't have any student loans. But that's a con that can be expensive. And also it's very competitive, especially as an international graduate. That's something that you really need to think out, that you could save a lot of money by doing medicine in Jamaica or your home country, but it's just so much harder to get into the system in the future that you have to just balance it out. If it's worth saving the money, or it's a bit easier route if you go to the States, but you'll have to spend a lot more money to go to the States. So those are kind of just the top pros and cons. There may be some other slightly things as well, like just like planning your life. The match process, how it works, they can put you nearly anywhere in the country. You might need to be moving lots of times. I've moved many times in the past few years, and I'm gonna have to constantly be moving as the career changes. So that's something as well. It's kind of hard to like stick down a path, what you want to do with you and your family, especially as you get older, you want to start having a family and settling down. So it's kind of a bit hard to do that along the medical route. But yeah, those are the top ones I could think of.
Right, and if you could share some advice with high school students who are currently wrestling with the decision about going to med school and what pathways to take, what advice would you share?
Yeah, so definitely, like I said, I think the most important thing is to speak to people in the career, get a full idea of the whole path of it. When I entered medicine, I honestly didn't know much. I just got into UE, went to medicine, but I didn't really think about long-term plans. I didn't even know the process of getting the residency in, going to Jamaica and then going to the States. I didn't even know how to do that. And I feel if I knew that, it would have affected my decision, definitely. Um, yeah, and other than that, also, like I said, get exposure to it, see if you're okay with it. And like, little things, for example, like if you're afraid of blood, that doesn't mean you can't do medicine, but you just have to know what you can't do in life. I had friends who were afraid of blood, but they got over it, but some people may not get over it. Other little things as well, just the kind of the hours that you have to work in medicine can be really ridiculous. 72-hour shifts sometimes. And it's crazy amount of hours you have to work. You're on your feet a lot, you're moving around a lot. Yeah, things like that you just kind of have to know before you get into it, and just do your research, know the different paths you can take, and just kind of know what it'll entail, the whole pathway. Other things as well, don't beat yourself up. I think I tell that a lot to people. A lot of my friends went to medical school as soon as they graduated, they thought, I don't want to do medicine anymore, and they're going to do something else with their life. And that's totally okay. A lot of my friends started medical school and they stopped in the middle of medical school because they, wanted to go on a different path. And I don't consider it a mistake. It's just, pivoting, and sometimes pivoting helps. Along my path, there's many times that, I thought, I had one path and I had to go that path and it didn't work out and I just had to pivot. At one point I was trying to go to England to do a master's, do a scholarship. I didn't get that. So I was okay, what do I do now? And I had to like create a new path in a way. But I'm 29 now, I still consider myself young. If I wanted to start over and do a different career, I can do it right now. It's never too late. And I just tell people, it's hard especially for medicine, it's kind of a weird thing that you're really committing to a life decision at 18. It's hard to make that life decision at 18. So, you know, if you make a decision and you want to change and pivot, that's totally okay. And, you know, just make sure you have people supporting you and giving you the right advice before you make these decisions along the process. Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
What age did you start med school, Dr. Wright? 18, right?
Yes, so in Jamaica you can start at 18 because you can go straight from high school to medical school. Yeah.
Okay. All right, super. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Wright. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All
Thank you
right,
for having me.
we are yes, we are definitely, we're not completely talking about law. We have Hallie King here, who is a practicing lawyer who's going to share, but we want to move actually next to Chelsea because, you know, Dr. Wright talked about being okay with a pivot and she's actually pivoted. So we want to hear a bit from her. Over to you, Janelle.
Thank you. Hi, Chelsea. Good
Hi,
evening for joining us today. Yes, so like Ms. Campbell mentioned, Dr. Wright talked about pivoting and considering that you're someone who actually made a pivot from pre-med to public health. Can you tell us about your journey and, you know, what that decision was like, what that process was like for you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think in Jamaica, when you're a high-performing student, and maybe if you're like me and you chat a lot, people tell you either should be a doctor or a lawyer. Turns out none of those paths were for me. However, because of a family experience, watching one of my uncles undergo like cancer treatment at a very young age, I was really drawn to medicine. Or what I thought was medicine, which I later learned was really the public health system, is what I was passionate about. So like I said, I was a high performer, I was a government scholar, all of these jazz. And so people were telling me like, oh, Chelsea, you're supposed to be the doctor. You're going to be the first doctor in the family. So of course I applied to Johns Hopkins University. I get in, I'm gonna do pre-med. I'm really excited. But I also start dabbling in the public health field. I started doing my public health major and I realized I'm good at this stuff and I love it. I don't really love necessarily the point at which patients get sick and now have to go to the doctor and find their cure. I actually want to know, how do I fix these systems before? How can I make sure that an 8-year-old child doesn't have to get all of their teeth removed? Like, how can I ensure that there are systems in place? Can we do mobile dental clinics at schools? Can we offer parents incentives to take their children to the dentist? Can we? And when I saw my brain doing all of that work, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not that interested in sitting with a patient one-on-one and saving a specific life. I'm actually interested in saving millions of people's lives at once with a policy, with a program. And so that's when I kind of did the shift, because also, you know, pre-med courses are challenging. If they're not challenging to you, you're really, really smart, like the top 1% smart. They're challenging, they're designed to be challenging because they're supposed to weed you out. And I got through it all. I did the bio and the orgo and the chem, and I got to physics and I tapped out at physics. I said, girl, we're not gonna struggle through this class when you know that, honestly, if we're being honest with ourselves here, you don't actually see yourself going to medical school. And so instead of investing that time in physics, I started at Hopkins. To graduate from the public health program, you have to take master's level courses at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins. So I started deep diving myself into master's level courses and I was so good at it. And I just loved it so much. It was like opening up a whole new can of worms. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to throw myself into this. Public health is what I enjoy. This is how my brain functions. It's how I think. And so that's how I shifted after a lot of tears and a lot of bawling and telling my mom my life would be over if I didn't become a doctor. Not true. So yeah, that's kind of my journey, my shift.
Okay, well, I think it's incredible, you know, being able to gain that sort of self-awareness to be able to make those decisions, especially when, you know, it feels like so many people want you to do one thing, but you really have to care about what's important for you or know what's important for you. So do you think you could tell us like, how can gaining this sort of self-awareness assist students in solidifying their decision to pursue careers in health or law?
Yeah, I think that it's important as we grow that we spend time with ourselves. That's easy for me because I'm an only child, so I have to spend time with myself. But it's important to self-reflect. It's also important. Dr. Wright spoke about this, about being open-minded. He said, be open-minded about your specialty, but also be open-minded to the path that your life can take. So I did this course while I was at Hopkins called the Life Design Lab that was designed at Stanford. And essentially one of the tasks was to think about 3 different ways your life could turn out and think about what about those pathways appeal to you, what don't appeal to you. And actually, I think after doing that, it's when I made that, I really decided to make that shift. I chose different avenues. I said I would be a farmer, a doctor, or an entrepreneur. And I started looking at all of these things. Well, guess what? Now I'm 25 and I own a 19-acre farm. So there's the farmer, and I'm registered with RADA as a farmer. So the farmer thing is happening. With the farming, you know, eventually you're gonna sell stuff. So there's the entrepreneurship happening. And I registered a business with my cousin, late last year. So there's the entrepreneurship part coming out. And then as I started to think about what my life would look like as a doctor, I didn't quite like it. I saw that it would take me, because if I did become a doctor, I knew I wanted to do surgery. I was thinking maybe orthopedic surgery or neurosurgery, which are just very long-winded paths. I knew that I would essentially not have a life for a long time. For me, family is important. I want to settle down, find a husband, if that's in my cards, have children as early as possible. And I didn't want to miss time away from my family because I was pursuing this goal that I wasn't really passionate about. And so when I did the Life Design Lab and I saw a farm, and I was like, I can go on the farm and I can run up and down with my kids and they can climb trees and I can be a present mom and I can be an entrepreneur where I can kind of determine how I spend my time and what ventures I want to take on. That seemed more appealing to me, and that seemed more my persona. I was like, do I want to wear scrubs every day, or do I want to get cute and put on makeup and wear heels? Like, these are these little like frivolous things that you think about, but that actually matter, because you spend most of your life at school and then most of your life at work. And so if I'm going to spend most of my energy, not all, doing this thing, I must enjoy it. It must feel purposeful to me, and it must align with the overall value system that I've set for myself. So a part of getting to know yourself is knowing what your values are like. So for some people, money is going to be a huge value system for them. They're not going to pursue a career path where they're not making a lot of money. For another person, it's freedom of time. For another person, it's freedom of travel. You can work anywhere in the world. For another person, it's being able to spend time with your family and being close to them. So you have to sit down and think about, what are the things that make me happy and how can I align my future career goals with this?
Right. And in addition to all these incredible things that Chelsea is doing, she is also working with students here at AIM to talk, to help them to understand discovering their purpose. And can you tell us a little bit about your work here at AIM, Chelsea?
Yeah, so at AIM, I function as an essay coach. I help with college consulting, and I also recently started with the AIM Early program, which targets 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th graders. To essentially do this, figure out their skill set, create healthy habits for themselves, not only academically, so they're striving academically, but also emotionally and spiritually and mentally, because we can't really forsake all of those other things, while helping them at an age appropriate level, of course, to discover what their purpose is. What are the things that they're intrinsically good at? What are the things that motivate them to get out of bed every day and continue doing something? So that's essentially what I do at AIM. I actually realized that I love working with students during my master's program at Hopkins. And it blew my mind because, Nicole has known me for a really long time at this point. And all of my teachers from AISK, when I tell them I love working with students, they're like, you you? I'm like, yeah, I know. So that's also a part of self-discovery, is pushing yourself to try things, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, and then you will actually surprise yourself that, hey, it comes naturally to me to bond with students and speak life into them and help them to think outside of the box, like help them to. I'm one of those people that parents like but also don't like, because I'm like, guess what? Mommy and daddy aren't going to be on campus with you for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So who cares if they like New York? Do you like New York? You
Yeah.
know, because you have to wake up every morning in this city and you have to be friends with these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
I love, I love your enthusiasm, Chelsea. I have to just jump in here. It's been a real privilege to have you as part of the AIM team. And you know, you can see and experience the passion that Chelsea has, and I think that's also really important, in that you have to get fired up about that thing that you're gonna do, or else, you know, why do it? So she's fired up and is translating that passion to working with our students. She had her first meeting with my daughter Lauren, who is in the seventh grade, at AISK, which is our second form. And so Lauren is gonna start working more with Chelsea, and even starting to map her current interests to what she might want to explore and do in the future. I just want to emphasize that our approach to career counseling at AIM is really about helping students to develop themselves and that self-awareness, getting to know their own interests, so that, you know, they can find paths that feel fulfilling to them. And that's why we're doing this session. So Chelsea, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. We have a question in the audience about, are we going to talk about law anymore? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We're moving on to Hallie King right now. Over to you, Janelle.
Thank you so much again, Chelsea, for joining us today and for sharing your journey with us, and reminding us that, you know, we're not planted anywhere. It's okay to pivot and make changes. Miss King, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so to jump right in, can you tell our students a little bit about your high school and college pre-journey and why you ended up choosing law?
Okay, so I was an aimer as well. I went to Immaculate and I started AIM in what would have been lower six. So the intention had always been to go away for college. When I had gotten the actual acceptance, it was the best offer I had gotten was for a school in Minnesota, which had also been the school that my brother had gone to. And after speaking to him, said, you know, I don't know if I'm ready to make that jump yet. Minnesota, the cold, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So I had applied to UE, more of a safety, which I would advise everybody to apply out here locally, just to ensure that even if it's not something you know for sure you want to do, have something out here that there's something out here that will hold your interest. I promise you. Just have a backup plan. But I had applied to the Faculty of Law and I had gotten in. So I did that for a year and I had deferred my acceptance abroad for a year, just to test out law, see if I had liked it. Ironically, I had never done any law subjects at all. Leading up to university, I had done bio, chem, and math at the Cape level. So I was always more scientifically inclined. But so the natural progression would have been, if I'm staying out here, medicine. Ironically, as Dr. Wright said, you don't have to have a fear of blood or something along that line. I was definitely afraid of blood, so that was out for me. So I tried the law route. First semester, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, especially finding yourself as a student, transitioning as a whole from high school to college or university, whether locally or overseas. It is going to be a challenge. You are now finding your study style, your study pattern, you're finding a lot of, you're basically having complete control over yourself. There's no longer a teacher that you have to check in with to say, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. So that first semester kind of threw me off, where it was really adjusting to university life. Faculty life is pretty straightforward in that UA, particularly at Faculty of Law, you don't really, outside of about 3 foundation courses that you do, your classes are all preset. So for the most part, you will be with that same group that you start with for the duration of the 3 years that you are at the Faculty of Law. With that being said, like I said, the first semester, pretty rough, but that more had to do with me adjusting to and getting into my study style and finding what worked best for me. And once I found that, going forward, I don't want to say it was smooth sailing, because smooth sailing is a very a very strong term. But once you find that and you discover yourself and how to navigate faculty overall, you find your core group, you find people you can study with, you find people who you mesh well with, and you kind of just find your little niche, then for the most part, it makes the process and the actual going through of school easier. So that's key. If you're considering law, you really need to find what works for you very early out. And what works for you is not necessarily what works for somebody else. So that's also very important to bear in mind.
And you talked a little bit about the transition from high school to college, but can you speak to the transition from, you're finished with law school now and it's time to practice? Talk a little bit about what that was like.
Okay, so I went straight from Faculty of Law to Norman Manley. And at the end of Norman Manley, I graduated in 2020.
Can you just share how long that is, how long the degree takes, and then how long you spent at Norman Manley and when?
Okay, sure. So law school at Faculty of Law at UWI is 3 years. Undergrad is 3 years, and then Norman Manley is 2 years. So you have first year and you have second year. The way it's set up is you go through the 2 years. They give you the option to repeat first year I believe it's if you fail, you can fail up to 2 or 3 subjects, and then you can resit a whole year if you fail 3. If you fail less than 3, you resit those particular ones that you failed. That's just a side knowledge that hopefully that will not happen to anyone here. But just an aside. So I graduated in 2020. During my last year was actually when Corona hit. So I was actually in class on a day, on the Tuesday, when we got the announcement, like the first COVID case had hit Jamaica. So immediately school closed down. This was the March. Exams would have been scheduled for May. And when that happened, all our classes and everything got shifted to online. It was a little tricky for us because at that time we still had physical legal aid sessions, which is where we would deal with clients in person. But for the most part, they had platforms. We had always used online interfaces, and they started using Zoom and so on, and we'd continue our classes. Following that, I hadn't done so a part of qualification to become an attorney requires in-service. In-service typically is supposed to be a 10-week process. You're supposed to study under an attorney who has been called to the bar for, I believe, at least 5 years. And that attorney, you shadow them, you do whatever they assign you to do, and then they will rank you. And that's just one of the things that you have to do. You also have to do petty sessions court, which is like parish court attendance to assist with that. There are other things along the way, but I hadn't done my in-service in my first year. It's typically done between the first and second year. I hadn't done it then, so now everything is in disarray because exams have been pushed back. We don't know if they're going to be face-to-face or not. So I ended up doing a shortened in-service period. My in-service period was only 8 weeks. I got to do half virtually, half in person. But also, I went straight from that into working. So fortunately, I knew someone who was looking initially before I was called, they needed a paralegal. And naturally, I've never been a paralegal, but I figured, hey, it can't be that bad. It's the same legal knowledge. So from the October exams got pushed back till July, I believe. We were about there, right? So we ended up doing first set of online exams, did online exams. I temped as a paralegal at a firm from it was the October to the December. Then when I got called in December, I started working at that firm as an associate from the January of 2021. And I worked there until July of 2022. That firm did absolutely no litigation. We were corporate governance, corporate law, conveyancing, probate, any type of law that's not litigation, essentially, we did. So I got a lot of experience with that. And then following that, I took some time off for personal reasons. And last year I started working with the NEPA, which if you don't know what that is, that's National Environment and Planning Agency, which is a government agency. So now I am on the other side of the spectrum and now I'm in court, which is also an adjustment. I do both civil matters where we defend the company as well as prosecute on behalf of the company. And we also do every type of law imaginable at NEPA, review contracts, review permits, everything imaginable that you would possibly think of coming up in law, we do at NEPA as legal officers. So that is where I am now.
Okay. And why did you opt out of corporate law and what's the best part of your job now, would you say?
There had always been a part of me that had been interested in the environmental aspect of things. And had I gone to school in Minnesota, I was supposed to do environmental studies. So there was always that interest. And there was nothing that really I had no problems with what I did. I didn't dislike firm life, so to speak. But when the opportunity arose with NEPA, to me, it kind of just seemed like it was meant to be. It had always been something that I had been interested in, and it seemed like a good opportunity. The best part about my job now, and I will be completely honest, I do not love litigation. As I think it was, is it Sophie or Sophia? I'm so sorry if I'm butchering her name, but right. Sophie had said that she knew she did not want to be a courtroom lawyer. That had been me. I sang that song from day one of law school. I will not be in court. I will never be in court. But once you get over the initial nerves and you start to get the hang of it, as with practice and with everything else, you know. But the best part about my job now for sure is that no day is exactly the same. And I used to dread that. I used to be very fearful of the unknown in the sense that I never know what tomorrow is gonna be like at work. But you learn so much, you're exposed to so much. It's invaluable experience. Like I've learned more in the last I've been there since July. If anybody's good at math, they can add that up really quickly for me and tell me how long that's been. But I have learned an invaluable amount in that period of time. And I only see myself learning more and growing more as an attorney. And it pushes you out of your comfort zone because, as I said, I never saw myself being in a courtroom. never thought I would be prosecuting anyone. And here I am. So just a learning experience, and it's been a really great one.
So it's really just making the most of the opportunity that you were presented with and just kind of going with it since it aligned with your initial interest.
Definitely.
All right. We have a quick question from someone in the audience. She wanted to know if you are assigned, or I'm not sure, if you're assigned to an attorney to shadow, or you have to write to them and ask or apply, like what that process is like.
Is that specifically for the in-service period that they're referring to? Right. So yes. So you reach out to an attorney or a firm. It can be an attorney who's practicing a sole practitioner, as long as they've been, as I said, for 5 years, or you can write to a firm. Most firms, they know the drill. It's important to apply early for that because there will be people applying. And as I was one of those people who you have to bear in mind, sometimes there are those in second year that still have to meet the requirement. So it's important to, once you can, get that done, as in send out your resume, make the application, let them know that you're interested in interning. Some firms, what they do or did, I don't know if that's still the case because I left law school in 2020. Some firms will offer you 5 weeks. And you'll have to do 5 weeks elsewhere, which is also fine. And then there's some firms that will offer you the full 10 weeks. It really just depends on where you go, but you will have to make contact with the attorney, and then they will in turn get the documents from the school. In other words, you tell the school who you're gonna be working with, and the school will email them the requisite documents so that they will have the form to fill out and be able to rank or grade you or assess and list all that you've done in the time that you were with them.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Hallie, for sharing your journey with us. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks again for having me.
All right.
Stay on for next couple of minutes because there are more questions for you. It's just that we have to move to Dr. Preston now because of how the time is going.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you so much, darling.
All right, so moving right along to Dr. Preston. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Dr. Preston.
And for waiting, and for waiting. We value your time and we appreciate you. Is beer winners on this panel, so they have any number of things they could be doing in addition to resting their bodies. So we appreciate you, Dr. Preston.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, so to jump right in, can you tell us what options doctors who trained locally have?
Okay, so if you finish med school here, we said it's 5 years, you get the MBBS degree. You can stay a general practitioner. So that's essentially your general doctor that can see most, basic conditions. So anybody comes for cough and cold or rashes, that's like the frontline workers. That's a general practitioner. So you could set up like a private office if it's your office, or you could work at someone's private office if it's an established office. What most people would ask is like, okay, when you're a doctor, everyone likes to ask you, what type of doctor do you want to be? That's essentially specializing. So to specialize, you have to do a residency program. So a residency program is essentially like, if you want to become a surgeon, a general surgeon, cardiothoracic surgeon, heart surgeon, ENT surgeon, Dr. Wright wants to become, that's a residency program. So there's the surgery, medicine, lots of this, many, many different specialties available. Luckily, in Jamaica, we are essentially the training hub of the Caribbean. So if a lot of other countries, they come to Jamaica, do med school here, and they try to specialize, and then they'll go back to their country to offer their specialty services there. So that's essentially the option you have. Most residency programs I think minimum is probably 4 years in Jamaica, but it can be as much as 6, 7 years. And another thing people don't really tell you is that a lot of times people don't really pass it in the time. So even if the program is 4 years, there are people that take 5 years, 6 years. Program can be 6 years, it can be taken much, much longer. And the other thing is that it's actually not guaranteed that you get in. A lot of these programs are pretty competitive because if you realize, think about it, there's Jamaicans trying to get in. There's people from other Caribbean countries. There's people from the US who may come in, or there's a lot of different.
I was about to ask you, Dr. Preston, if you see US applicants to UE programs, because Dr. Wright was sharing, and I share with our students who are on that pathway that, you know, UE is a very cost-effective way of getting this degree. And then you're going to share with us that USMLE path. But do you see, because we have some people in the audience who are based in the US, diaspora folks and just US residents, what is the process like? Do you see US-based people coming over to UE to do?
So in my medical class, there were probably at least 10 or 15 people from the US. So they were maybe born in America, had some training, but they said, okay, I want to come to Jamaica, get my training here, get my MBBS degree. And then some of them, for example, stayed in Jamaica, did a residency program. And then some of them went on to go under the USMLE and then go back to America. So they come here for training, then go back for essentially the basic training and then go up for specialty training.
Okay. And this saves money, even if
Yeah.
you are not.
Yeah, especially if you can get the
country.
especially if you can get the subsidy, but even if you don't get the subsidy, well, I guess every year the price changes and stuff, but when they were actually, I remember that was a question some of us asked them, like, hey, like, why did you come here and stuff? And then when they actually show the math and, okay, this, that, it actually works out a lot of times better.
Okay, wonderful. Back to you, Janelle.
All right. Can you tell us what the USMLE is and what the process is for working in the US after completing your studies here in Jamaica?
Okay, so the USMLE stands for US Medical Licensing Exam. Is essentially a 3-step exam. Step 1, step 2, step 3. You're essentially everyone takes a different time period to do the exam. Some people can do it as fast as 3 months to do each step, but most people would recommend at least 6 to 12 months for each step. But the other thing is it's very variable because some people, for example, they have to work while they're doing the exam. So they could do MBBS here, working as a doctor here at a hospital, at a private practice, using some of their money. Because the other thing is that the exams itself is expensive. So there's the medical training, which is expensive, but each step exam is at least like $1,000 US. A lot of times there's other costs too. So for example, there is a question bank. Question banks are very helpful for your step process. One of the most popular ones called UWorld, that subscription I think is probably at least 400 or 500 US for 6 months. And then almost everyone, and you need that for, well, it's recommended for almost every step. So there's a lot of other costs. There's like an English exam that you have to do as an IMG in addition to the step process. There's a lot of other costs associated with it, the time too. It's not something that you have to be very serious if you want to do it. It is definitely, you can definitely excel at it, as Dr. Wright did. He got into ENT, which is a very hard to match in specialty. But one of the other things I like to mention is that one of the reasons it's a bit hard, or it can be harder for an IMG coming from Jamaica, is that the curriculum that or some of the things that essentially they test you on for the US exam, it's a bit different, or it's some of these things you don't really focus on as much in your MBBS degree training or in Jamaica. So imagine that there are some illnesses that Americans will have a lot more common versus Jamaicans. So like, for example, sickle cell here, it's a big thing, but in America, it's not necessarily as focused on. Like you have to, in Jamaica, you have to know everything about sickle cell, but in America, maybe you don't have to know as much. There's certain rare diseases that we rarely see in Jamaica, but in America, they love you to know lots and lots of detail about it. So there's like a different process and different things that you're going to have to focus on. So even like a lot of people, for example, recommend that you should actually start studying or learning and taking your step process during medical school. It kind of helps because, for example, some of the things that you especially like step 1 will test you on, they tend to be kind of pushed to the back, especially as you get into your later years in medical school, like final year and stuff like that, like the biochemistry and things like that. It's not really a big focus. So a lot of times we recommend that, okay, if you know from the beginning that you want to go to the US and study, you should start, it's like you have to learn your regular med school stuff, and then also learn the additional sometimes stuff for your STEP or for your USMLE exam.
Okay. And how long would you say the process is from med school in Jamaica to practicing in the US?
So once again, very variable. If say for example, you're someone who, I know friends, for example, that have done their step one before they even finished medical school in Jamaica. So medical school here is usually 5 years. They may have already finished step one. So by the time they finish being a doctor in Jamaica, they just want to do their internship, which is 1 year. And then your second year is known as your senior house officer year. And while some people, while they're working during their internship, are able to also sit the next step. So they could do step two during internship, but you have to be very disciplined for that. Not everyone can do that. Some people kind of fall off in their internship year because of how demanding it can be. Maybe they do some light studying, and then some people actually try to take it in their senior house officer year. So if they did step one in medical school, they could do step two between internship and SHO year, and then they could do step three. You're looking at probably minimum, well, if you include the medical school, maybe it's 6 years or so, 7 years, but it can even be more. It's very hard to say because it also depends on what, how disciplined you are, how strong you are as like a medical student. Because if you think about it, if you're a strong student, you are always, you know how to study, you know how to learn. It's going to take you a lot shorter time, especially if you're also very disciplined. You're someone who can sit with a routine, wake up every morning, study 3 hours a day, and you know all of that, versus someone who has a hard time setting up a routine, was also struggling in medical school. It could take much longer for them.
Okay. Earlier I mentioned that you are the host of the Limitless podcast and you're the co-founder of ACE Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about your own career path and your journey?
Okay, so for the A side, I recently, not that long, about it's probably around 6 months or so. I've been working with ACE Academy. Essentially, we are a medical technology company. We focus on medical education. We try to use data-driven methods. We try to pair students with tutors who have essentially aced the USMLE. They've got the scores, they've matched into, they found the tricks and tips and things like that to ace the exam. And we match you with that tutor, and we help guide you along that USMLE process, review sessions, teach you how to approach questions, things like that. So that's the ACE side. The Limitless side, that's been going on, I think, about 2 years or so, 2 years this year. That's more passion I have in terms of just personal finance. And, you know, a big issue like with medicine is that even just in Jamaica in general, we don't really talk about money, how to manage your money, finances, and that is a core part of being that's a core part of life. You want to learn how to manage your money, how to invest your money and things like that, so that you aren't, working after years and you don't have the money to do this or do things that you want. You can't retire, things like that. So that's the Limitless side. It's a podcast. We're on all podcasting platforms, YouTube, Spotify, all of that, Apple Podcasts. Yeah.
Okay. So we're just gonna get a few quick questions from the audience. Someone asked, how recognized are Jamaican medical degrees internationally in the US, UK, Europe, etc.?
So the medical degree we get here is the MBBS, which is essentially the same degree you would get in the UK. So in most countries, we couldn't just necessarily practice immediately. You would have to do some sort of exam. So for example, for the US, that's the USMLE. For the UK, that would be the PLAB exam. So most of the time, you're going to have to do some sort of additional exam or set of exams. Like PLAB, I think PLAB is part 1, part 2. USMLE is essentially part 1, part 2, part 3. But you usually have to do some additional learning or some, additional learning to work in another country.
Okay. And finally, what would you say are, the pros and cons to going to med school in Jamaica and then practicing in the US versus just doing medicine overseas?
Okay, so pro, the cost, especially if you can get the subsidy. I remember, well, I think at one point they had stopped the subsidy, but I was lucky enough to get the subsidy. It was an 80-20 subsidy, so I only had to pay 20%, and you can also get scholarships to further offset that cost. The other thing, if you can be around your family, you still live in Jamaica, your family, friends, things like that. You don't have to leave them if you stay here. The other thing, I guess this may be a bit controversial, but because we are a resource limited setting, I think it develops our clinical skills a lot more. So for example, in the US, they can get a CT scan a lot more readily. So a lot of times they'll just order CT scans for almost every patient versus us, where we may not always be able to get the scans as fast. So you have to be able to make the diagnosis with your clinical skills. So I think that I think our clinical skills on average are probably better than like a US doctor. So I think that would be a pro of coming to Jamaica. And then the other thing is that there are certain conditions that we specialize in. Like we have a lot more experience with managing because it's just more common in Jamaica. So you can get that experience in Jamaica. Pros for the US, the curriculum that you have, it is more structured towards the STEP exam. So remember I said that with UE, you're going to be learning certain things that, for example, isn't as heavily focused on in the STEP exam. So you're then going to have to put additional time to learn for the USMLE exam. But if you're in a US school, you're going to already be learning that. So it could be a bit, you could say it's a bit easier to study for that. The other thing is that research opportunities a lot of times are more easy or more available in the US. So in Jamaica, we're getting up there with the research, but it's definitely not as prevalent as in the US. So a big thing is that when you're trying to match, you want to, make your CV more attractive. And a lot of these, universities and stuff, they like to see someone who has research experience. So that can help. But it's not that you can't do research in Jamaica. You have to it is more harder, or you have to work a bit harder, but it is still possible. And also the thing is that if you like practice here, you're kind of probably used to the Jamaican medical system, which is slightly different from the US medical system. So if you're there all the time, it's like you're, I guess, a bit more accustomed to the US system. Yeah. And the other thing too is that in Jamaica, as I said, it can be pretty hard to study for the USMLE exam while you're also working as a doctor here, because, our healthcare system is still developing. So we sometimes have longer hours and things like that can make it hard to study at the same time.
Dr. Preston, thank you so much for that. Very quickly, someone is asking, can you start studying overseas, then work in Jamaica? What is that process like?
So I'm actually not sure. I guess it's not a very common route. So there are people, like, for example, I know someone who she did medical school in China. There is just like how we have to do an exam or set of exams to work in the US, there are actually a set of exams that you have to do to work here. I think it's CAMC, but don't quote me, but there are some exams that you'd have to do to work as a medical doctor here.
Super, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Preston, for sharing that with us. Yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is a super tough panel discussion because, it's so much information. We should have perhaps, in retrospect, I would do med and law separately. I did not even imagine that it would be just so much to cover and that folks would have so many questions. And we still have one more speaker left to tell us about how scholarships to Cuba and that pathway work. Meanwhile, we still have questions for Holly and for Dr. Preston. So yeah, it's tight and we're over the hour mark at this point. So what I'm going to ask Dr. Preston, who has already given us so much of his time so generously, is to just give us a couple more minutes. We're going to have Mr. Francis just talk quickly about the opportunities that exist for Cuban scholarships. I know that has been in the media a great deal. I also, in case there are any future lawyers here who are who are looking at that as a career pathway, I do want to announce that AIM has a pre-law boot camp for 1 week this summer that's going to give you real insight. It's for 3rd to 5th, 6th formers. It's going to be a week that gives you real insight into the practice, profession, study of law. You're going to have real case studies and real, a mock trial, and we have a chance to witness live proceedings, etc. Traditionally, these kind of opportunities only really existed in the US. Like, we always go overseas to do these kind of career programs, but AIM is excited to launch this program as part of the AIM Career Map program that we do have now. So it's a pre-law bootcamp is July 8th to 12th. So Janelle, I'm sure, has shared the information. It's not technically even open yet. The first, I think, we are launching it for the first time here, and we haven't opened up it to our email list yet. So if you are interested in applying for that program, July 8th through 12th, this summer in Kingston, Jamaica, then please go ahead and click that link. And we're going to admit and assess students on a rolling basis. And so as soon as you can get your application into that program, that would be great. And we're keeping it small. It's only going to be 20 students because we want to really have it be a great experience. And so encourage you to do that. We also have, if you are leaving this conversation and you have more sort of like, is this a right fit for me? I think I would like to do law, but now that I think about it, I'm not so sure. Or med, we also have the AIM Career Map assessment. So this is a 2-part assessment where we will have you do an actual DISC profile to get to know your actual interests. Use other tools like mind mapping, and Chelsea is one of the counselors that's going to be delivering that program. So that's available to 1st all the way through 6th formers, just to get a better sense of where you might be headed and what actual opportunities would exist. I think it's so important to find the right fit. And I think all of our speakers have shared that. And it's much easier to endure hard times and to find motivation to, manage yourself and build resilience, which is what you need through any of these careers, and to be successful in life generally. It's much easier to find that when you really, feel convicted about what you're doing. So we would encourage you to do that as well. And Janelle, I think there's something associated with the career map. Is it the first 10 or what's the plan?
Yes, so we're launching the program. So the first 10 persons, the cost will be $200, but the price is actually $275 US.
Right, so you get $75 off the first 10 people who register for the program. It's a 2-part assessment, and you get a detailed report that's 20 pages long with very deep insights. And I think it's going to be something that's a game changer for students. So we're excited to do that. Let me now just move on to Mr. Craig from Cuba jump to Cuba, and then we can get to the questions that Hallie and Dr. Preston need to answer. Hi, Mr. Francis. Thank you for bearing with us. Your patience is appreciated. Hi.
Hi, how are you? Hi,
Cuba
Janella.
is in the news, man. Cuba is in the news. These Cuban scholarships, everybody wants to know the scope.
Well, most of the Cuban scholarships are really offered by the GOJ. You make the application through the Ministry of Finance, and they're offered every year for study in Cuba. And study in Cuba is really pretty good. You can get there without a scholarship. It's pretty good to study there. As an option. Here to study medicine, we do 5 years, but the entire program is 50,000 a year roughly. The entire course in Cuba, which is 6 years, is 55,000 for the 6 year, and you complete. And then you're able to come back here and work, or you're able to go to the US, because I know that's probably a question that person would ask.
Mr. Francis, you have to do that. You have to do that exam Dr. Preston asked about to qualify to now study in Jamaica.
Right, you just leave and go there and study, because a lot of persons wonder if seeing what is happening, the embargo between USA and Cuba, will I be able to study or practice in the United States after I complete study in Cuba? And the answer to that is yes, you can. You don't have to do the US MLE exam. To do that, you can come here and become a doctor, sit the exam here as well, work in Canada. You can work pretty much anywhere, studying in Cuba. And the advantage of studying in Cuba, you get a new environment, you learn a new language, so you become bilingual, which is really important now to work anywhere. If you have to work in Miami, you need to know Spanish. You get a new culture, and you just get to see how people live. I've had occasion to go there several times and observe, and it's really different, and a really robust program that they have there. So it is an option that persons can explore to study medicine. And I see someone just asked, that is a Cuban degree valid in the US? Yes, you can go there and do their exam, the US MLE, or you can come to Jamaica, become a doctor, and then go over. But you are able to practice there with the Cuban degree, because the degree is not certified by the United States. It's the international organization, World Health Organization, they have certified, you are able to use to practice wherever once you sit their local exam. So it's a good option to try, and it's an option for persons to do. Pretty easy to get in. So if there are questions about it, we can talk about that. But it's a good option for persons to explore if they want to do medicine somewhere else and learn a new language, learn a new culture.
Okay. And we know that this is a very personal journey for you as well, Mr. Francis, since your daughter actually navigated this pathway. Can you share some of the challenges and successes that you encountered while going through this process?
Well, I actually do this now because of her, and I saw you have it's Chelsea here. My daughter is Chelsea, so when I heard Chelsea, my ears perked up. She has always wanted to do medicine. It's something that she wanted to do from a very young age. The only thing that changed during the time was her specialty. She would move from one thing to the next, but she always knew that she wanted to do medicine. And we're just exploring different options, and then that turned out to be the best option for us at the time. And we chose that option, and like I said, when I went to Cuba the first time with her, it was one, so you had vaccination and your COVID card, and you had to quarantine. I went to Cuba, I knew no one, no habla español or poco. Landed there, I didn't know where I was staying. She was gonna go to, oh Lord.
I think Mr. Francis is having some technical difficulties. But in the meantime, what we could do is to start with some of the questions from the Q&A section. There were some questions for Hallie as well as Dr. Preston, so we can just jump right into those. So to start, Hallie, someone asked, when doing the 3 years Faculty of Law at UWI, did you have a great passion for it while doing your studies?
Truthfully, no, but that was simply because at the undergrad level, you're exposed to everything in theory. You really get to see it in real life when you go to Norman Manley. That's when you're actively doing what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's the type of learner I am. So it's not that I wasn't passionate about it, or it's not that I had a dislike or ill feelings towards it, but the passion came later down for me because I was experiencing more on a like hands-on basis. Sorry, you're speaking, but I'm not hearing you.
Sorry about that. Is what would you say are some of the obstacles you faced in studying law, and how did you overcome them?
I think I had alluded to this briefly, but my biggest challenge was definitely in my first semester with trying to find what worked best for me study-wise and how to retain the information, because the reality is it is a lot of information and you are moving from kind of being spoon-fed, even if they like to say at the high school level that they don't spoon feed us, but you're transitioning to kind of finding everything else on your own. You're given lecture sheets with just cases to look up, and sometimes there'll be like 60 cases and you have to, you know, pick and choose what you're going to look up and that kind of thing. So my biggest challenge was really finding the strategy that worked best for me. I now know that I'm the type of person that I do best when I kind of teach myself the information. And then I can get together with a study group after the fact and go through everything. But whereas other people can learn from study groups straight off the bat, I'm not that type of person. So it's really, that was my biggest obstacle, just figuring out what worked best for me. And once I got that, then it was smoother going.
Okay. Can I just jump in here? Thank you so much for that, Ali. We'll have a couple more questions for you, but right before that, there's a question for Dr. Preston.
Sure.
Does the ACE Academy have an Instagram page? And then also someone whose daughter wants to go into radiology, what's the best path? I would imagine that is a meaning the specialties come afterwards. So with specializing even with the interest in radiology, you'd first focus on the first step, which is to go to med school. That would be my my college advisor had answered that question. But Dr. Preston, could you go ahead and share what your thoughts are on those questions, the Instagram page and the path to radiology?
Yes, we have an Instagram. I'll share it in the chat soon. Read the radiology question. It depends of the person would first have to decide, okay, do I want to become a radiologist or do the USMLE, or you can do a radiology here. We have a radiology program here. It's, I think, 4 years. It's pretty competitive though, but I'd say one of the things I would advise, if you think you really know what you want from early, when you're in medical school, even though you focus on, okay, I need to be able to know general things, what you should do is try to focus kind of on the radiology aspect a bit. So you just gradually get more accustomed to radiology, practice reading scans, things like that. Because if you are very good and you've like, after that 5 years, you've been reading scans, doing research on radiology, you can even, for example, shadow doctors sometimes. There's a lot of things that you can do, just essentially show interest. But remember, at the end of the day, you might think you want radiology and then you go into medical school and you end up wanting something else. So always keep somewhat of an open mind, even though you can, have your focus. A lot of times people have something that they're interested in initially, and that is not the thing that they end up doing. A complete 180 sometimes. Medicine is very broad. But if you do think you want radiology, I would say just gradually expose yourself to radiology throughout medical school. The other thing is that when you're internship, the first year after, you don't really choose where you go, or you don't choose which specialties, because everybody does a standard rotation. For senior house officer, the year after, you actually can apply and choose somewhat where you want to go. So, for example, if you are interested in radiology, you did medical school, you thought you liked radiology, you could apply to do radiology as a SHO. You usually have 3 different blocks. There's a mandatory block, which is your health center rotation. and you have 2 other blocks. So usually you can do radiology, or you could apply for radiology and you could apply for something else. And sometimes if you're lucky, say you do radiology first, which I'd recommend, because there's a different set of orders. Sometimes you could do the 2 specialties and then health center. If you are applying for a program in Jamaica, I'd advise to try to do that specialty first, because you'll get exposure there. You don't want to do the specialty last, because usually around the time of interviews, you may not have actually rotated through that department yet. So I would say that, okay, you'd at least want to be working with the people who could be accepting you into the program first. And if you're lucky and you really do like radiology, you can sometimes essentially apply for an extension. So say you did radiology first, you realize you liked radiology, you can switch sometimes what you're going to do second to radiology, so you can even get more experience, show them that you're more committed to it, and then do your health center rotation last, and then apply for the program here if you are interested in that.
Wow, that was super comprehensive. Thank you for that, Dr. Preston. All right, this one is for Ali. Ali, as a kid student who is unsure what is the best fit on which type of law I should practice, what do you recommend to be properly exposed to different types before I make my final choice?
Sorry, that was a pretty lengthy question. So I'm actually just gonna look back in the chat because that was
Essentially,
asking.
it's, you know, how do you know which type of law you might want to practice? How can you know that from high school?
Okay, so the thing is, you're never gonna know what kind of law. The reality is, even at the undergrad level, what you're exposed to is not necessary. Like, it builds the foundation. And I never did CAPE law, so I really can't speak to CAPE law. As I said, I had done biochem and math. But you really get an idea of the real life law and the stuff that you'll be practicing more on a day-to-day basis at Norman Manley. So doing CAPE law is beneficial. And I saw that in my friends who had done it, because they kind of had a bit of a head start in terms of just knowing some of the topics, or being familiar with some of the courses. For example, criminal law that we had done in first year, I believe it was at undergrad. They had an idea about some of the case law, that kind of thing. But as Sophie said, it was different for me because coming from a more scientific background, it had its benefits as well, because I was able to write in a much more concise manner, and that kind of analytical thinking, which is another aspect of law. So it's twofold. There are benefits to both.
So science prepared you for law, you would say?
In a strange way, it did.
Yeah, that is so cool, because I think part of the, you know, we've been doing all these career days, and part of it is that, you know, kids feel so pressured and stressed to choose the right subjects from early on, you know, if they don't get it right in third form, they feel like they're closing off all these different options. But in fact, you were STEM all the way up through high school. All the way.
To be very fair, I did literally everything, because at CSEC, Immaculate had, I believe it was 6 compulsory subjects.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing 10 overall. So I did everything from history to add math to
you
geo,
were, and that's why you got a great, you were an attractive applicant to US Liberal Arts College for sure.
Yeah.
Because you had a broad-based preparation. But you know, it was interesting to hear that studying science also helped you in that program. And
it definitely did.
Someone asked in the chat about some of the soft skills and some of the interpersonal skills that are important for these different professions. And 2 things that I heard come out of what Doctors Wright and Preston shared, and then what you also shared, Hallie and Sophie, is that you have to, you share this, like you have to be able to find out what works for you. And I think, and the ability to manage yourself. Chelsea, you referred to this quite a bit when you were speaking, like the ability to be self-aware, to know yourself, to be able to make decisions about what will work for you and what won't, and then to be able to manage yourself, to bring yourself to task when you need to. and be responsible for your learning and have that independent approach is so important in both programs. That resilience is so important. And those are things you can actively build through high school. So that's really great news.
I think, and I also just want to jump in really quickly. I think that we focus a lot on IQ, but emotional intelligence is very important as well. And emotional intelligence helps you with your interpersonal skills. So outside of being really good at academics, are you an empathetic person? Like, do you have sympathy for others? Do you actually sit and listen to what others are saying before you reply? How self-aware are you? You know, I know myself, I can be very loud and whatever. So when I go into certain rooms, I ensure that I take a step back and allow others to speak before I speak. So it's those things, being aware of yourself and then acting accordingly. So like I said, spending time with yourself, but emotional intelligence is very important, and it is a huge marker for future success in any career, medicine, law, further on, etc., etc.
That's awesome. And I just want to like mention again, and I shared the link. Janelle wasn't able to share the link, but I did share the link, that working on that emotional intelligence and understanding yourself as a person, and then how that will fit into any given career. That's something you can do in the AIM career map assessment. Chelsea is going to be working with students on that. So if you want to go ahead and book Chelsea to do that, you can at the link that we provided earlier. And then the other aspect that we've heard Hallie and Dr. Preston allude to is time, how long things take. People have asked those questions. I want to remind you that, you know, we're talking about success stories here, but there are people who fail exams, who a law degree takes longer, medical degree takes much longer because they, you know, are not able to pass through various aspects of the program, which could have anything to do with, you know, from test taking skills to self-management to studying effectively, etc. These are all skills you can be building throughout high school. And we're, you know, as I said, AIM is known for helping kids to go overseas, but the AIM career map and the work that we're doing with students in improving their performance will help to build skills so they're ready for any career, and so that whichever path they choose, they can find success there in a smoother way, right? So that's really important. Somebody asked if the SAT is a good suggestion when doing law overseas. Really? You know, it's the LSAT that they want when you're doing law overseas. But what you need to know is that law is not a direct entry program in Canada or in the United States. So you have to do a 4-year degree first, then apply to law school. In the same way, you have to do a 4-year degree first, then apply to med school. So this is not a direct pathway, but the exam that you do take to go to law school in the US is called the LSAT. There's another really important question that was asked about what do you do if you do your Bachelor of Law, you do law school in Jamaica, right? And then you want to now go and practice in the US. Now, what that means, the rules vary by state in the US. And I'm going to give the quick answer, but if you want to book a consultation with AIM for us to take you through the different pathways and what might work for you, you can feel free to do that. But let me try and break it down. You would do the law program here, and then there are some states, so it's a state-by-state rule in the US. So it depends on which state you're trying to go to, and they will have different rules. So the path that a lot of people follow is where they actually do an LLM. I have a student right now that did her law degree in the UK and wants to move back to the US, and she has just applied to the LLM programs, because the LLM, when you do an LLM, which is a Master of Law in the US, you are now qualified, you're now eligible to sit the bar in certain states. So you know, you would prepare for the bar, sit it, and then you can practice in that state. So that's kind of roughly how that works. And the LLM is a program you can apply for. She actually just got a scholarship as well. So there is a pathway for foreign trained lawyers. All right, great. Woo, so many questions. Where are we, Janelle? Can you transition from UA Law without going to Norman Manley to a Canadian law school? Oh, goodness gracious, that is quite a detailed question. I'm not sure, to be honest. I would need to do some research about, we haven't had any kids who go to Canada. We've had them all wanting to go to the US after qualifying. So we would need to research that and get back to you on that. I always say, I don't know everything, but whatever I don't know, I can certainly find out. So we'll find that out. We mostly do pathways for UK and the US when it comes to law. So I can find out what that would look like for Canada. Which type of law is better to study, corporate or criminal? No, I am certainly not a lawyer, but that depends on really on you. I would say the important question are what are the pros and cons for each, and then you figure out what that fit might be like. Those are some of the things we'll also be covering in the pre-law boot camp, and we'll have kids going to actual court to witness proceedings and talking to different types of lawyers and networking with them. But I don't know if Hallie, based on your exposure and experience, could you take that question? What's better to study, corporate or
Sure, I can. As you had said, it really has a lot to do with you as a person. Criminal law to me requires a bit more, I don't know if stamina is the right word, but a bit more oomph. And not everybody has that. That's just my personal opinion. However, I prefer the civil aspect of law, and I have done both. I've done criminal on a much smaller scale. This is my first time doing it with this job that I'm in now. But I prefer civil matters, and they tend you're able to prepare a bit more, I would say. Criminal to me, and I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form, are corporate, and I'm using corporate and civil interchangeably, but civil kind of encompasses everything that's not criminal. So it will encompass corporate law, encompass conveyancing, which is real estate, that sort of thing. To me, I just think you're able to prepare more. If you're somebody who's passionate about advocacy, if you're somebody who's passionate about defending human rights, people, etc., by all means, criminal law might be right up your alley. I was more a paper pusher type of girl before this job. So if you're looking at it strictly from a money-making point of view, again, that also depends, because you have people who have positions like in-house counsel who do make good money, but then you also have criminal defense attorneys who make good money, and then you have people who are on the other side as prosecutors or working with the DPP. So again, it really just depends on you, your personality, what you enjoy, and what you think fits you best.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Hallie. Really appreciate that. That was great. Dr. Preston, someone is asking, what's the best path for a pediatrician?
Once again, that's variable. The pediatric program here, I think, is about 4 years. The pediatric program, I think, in the US is about the same in terms of the difficulty matching. So if you did the USMLE, you always have to always say match. Pediatrics is one of the easier ones to match into. The general harder ones are, a lot of surgical specialties, especially specialized surgical specialties. So in terms of the matching process, you do have a good chance to match into pediatrics. I mean, the general recommendation, once again, so if you would still focus on your medical school, but if you are interested in pediatrics, the same thing in terms of trying to, familiarize yourself with pediatrics. That could be like your best topic or best, knowledge area as you go through medical school. When you go into internship, you do a pediatric rotation. So what I would suggest is, being around or showing interest, things like that, staying after research, anything like that, while you're doing internship, during your pediatric part, you can, familiarize yourself with the consultants, because they'll be the ones doing the interview for you. And then when you do a SHO, you could also request, once again, to be on pediatrics. It's not something that most people would request, but you can request that. And yeah, this the same, I guess, general advice, just be kind of focus on that. But once again, you don't want to go into medical school with just, okay, definitely pediatrics, because you might have that in mind. And when you go on your first pediatric rotation, you realize, nope, this is not for me. So keep an open mind.
All right, Dr. Preston, what about same question for cardiology?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. So, throughout medical school, focus on your cardio. That could be your bread and butter. You know it like the back of your hand. If you get in research opportunities, doing it while you do medicine through your internship, you can sometimes ask to be on a cardiology or specialty service, so you can get some work experience in cardiology to see if that really is something you want. You can even taught, like one of the things you can even do is you sometimes will be taught by a cardiologist through medical school. You can say, hey, you could approach them after like a lecturer. Hey, my name is this. I am interested in cardiology. What would you recommend, or do you have any research opportunities? There are sometimes conferences, for example, there's medical conferences almost every week. Some of them are on cardiology. You could, attend that. Sometimes they give, I think if you're a medical student, it's either free at some of them, or it's heavily subsidized. So you could attend that cardiology session, ask questions. And then once again, when you go on your internship rotation, you ask to be on cardiology if you can. And then when you're SHO, you can apply to be on medicine and try to rotate through cardiology to get more experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that what's so interesting is that, a lot of the advice across both professions is similar, because if you remember that Sophie earlier on said, talk to as many people as possible. Tell them what you're interested in doing. And what I'm hearing from you, Dr. Preston, is no matter what specialty you want to go in, if you know, the earlier you know that, like the minute you know that, start taking action on that. Like, ask to be placed in that area, meet other doctors who are practicing that area, learn, network. These are, again, soft skills that is very important to apply in any career. So that's really important to hear and know. You have to be assertive these days. Like, gone are the days when you're just going to follow this prescribed path and think that everything that's right for you is gonna just come to you if you just, sort of just put your head down and do it. No, you need to have your head up and be able to advocate for yourself and be able to build relationships and to be assertive, because these days that's a premium. That's really a premium. It's a competitive space any which way you look at it. So thank you for sharing that so much. All right, well, the last question, Hallie, and Doc, how is life outside of work being in law/medicine? Do you have a fair amount of free time? What is it like?
I'll go first. So once again, very variable. So for example, if you're a doctor, people don't realize that, everyone probably knows about duties. So you're on call, where you're overnight working, things like that. There are some parts of medicine where you don't have to do duties at all. Like, for example, pathology, things like that, you don't have to do duties. So you're not going to be necessarily up late at night. There's some services where you're not working on weekends. You could be a GP and you could set your hours. You could say, oh, I'm only going to work Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and those days are off. So first off, it's very variable. For me right now, I'm working somewhere where I have duties, but I don't really have, there are some places where they're working 10, 12, 15 duties a month. So they are very busy. They're not really getting much sleep a lot of times. But for like right now where I'm working, I don't really have as many duties. Most weekends I'm off. Most of the times work, starts 8:30, ends 4:30. And generally that stays about the same. It's medicine. So for example, if you're still working with patients and an emergency happens at 4:30, you can't just say, oh, I'm off. You have to take care of the patient first. So there will still be times where you may have to stay a little later and things like that. But once again, that's variable depending on where you're working. If you're working at a hospital, if you're working at a clinic, for example, at a clinic, most of the times it's, you can be leaving, depending on the clinic once again, but you could be going to work 8, 9 o'clock and leaving 1 o'clock sometimes. So it's very variable.
Thanks, Hallie.
I'll preface this by saying that I'm a firm believer in work-life balance. And so working hours are 8:30 to 4:30. That doesn't mean that there won't be times where you will be required to stay late. For me, that's mostly when I'll have a trial or there's something like a legal opinion due that, I absolutely have to finish and the resources are at work. But I would actually prefer to take something home with me and do it at home, because to me, when it's 4:30, I'd like to leave. But it's really about time management. It's about time management, and to me, that's the most important part of it. Because if you're managing your time properly, I'm not saying there won't be instances where you will be required to stay late or things won't come up, especially when you have 3 meetings back to back, but you still have 10 files on your desk that you have to, review. But at the end of the day, if you're managing your time properly and you're ensuring that you're meeting your deadlines, I'm all for maximizing living life and ensuring that I'm getting a good balance, whether it's just a full night of sleep, coming home to just watch TV, unwind, going to the gym after work, whatever it is. I'm making sure that I'm getting the best balance, but still meeting all my deadlines and anything that needs to be done.
From your Instagram page that you are getting quite a bit of balance there, Holly, and living your best life, going to the Drake concerts and just, being alive, okay?
It's just one life to be lived.
One life. Listen, I agree. And I think happiness is so important. We have a question here, like, what's the most profitable field of law? I was thinking conveyancing, but I want to know what options. I just wanted you to know that I started out in my career thinking about, like, what's the thing I'm going to do to make the most money? And I thought that was going to be me being an investment banker. I did it for 2 summers. It was the most miserable time of my entire life. And I'm like, this cannot be the only way to make money in life. So I want to just say that when you look at your career as a function of, like, what is going to make me the most money, that might come at the expense of you being happy. And there's also a certain point where no matter how much money they give you, you don't want to be in a situation where you're miserable. But I do understand financial goals. So I urge you to balance that off with, also your personality, your interests, the things that you really are aligned to and will match. But Holly, people want to know what made the most money in law.
Again, it depends, because conveyancing is a very lucrative area. Because on average, just off top of my head, thinking for the sale of a property, the average lawyer will charge anywhere between 2 to 3% of the price of the land that they're selling. So, and it's a pretty straightforward process.
Yeah.
In most instances. Criminal law can also be lucrative, especially if you have high profile cases, and the more clientele you build in that area and the more of a name that you build for yourself in that area, then there's a greater chance of making money because you're attracting more clients. Corporate governance is also lucrative area. There aren't many corporate governance specialists here, and that's something that companies really need. And it's something that not as much emphasis was placed on, but it has for the last couple of years been a thing now. So that's a lucrative area, as well as with the implementation of the Data Protection Act. You now have a call for data protection officers, and that's a special type of training. So that's also a lucrative area to look into. Cybersecurity, those type of niche areas, those are things that can make you good money. But again, mental health, very important. So don't do it just for the money.
We have mental health specialist Chelsea here who will re-emphasize that, I'm sure. And so finally then, Dr. Preston, we can't leave and don't ask you what's the best money-making specialties in May, because we need to balance.
It really depends, because once again, like, if you are someone who is willing to work really hard or just work crazy hours and stuff, you can be making someone more money than someone. But
Right.
I would say generally a surgical specialty, especially if you are specialized, like, and even, for example, subspecialized.
Right.
Or for example, some of the specialties coming up, like cardiology, for example, they have like interventional radiologists or interventional cardiologists, where they can that's like essentially like a subspecialty of cardiology. So if you specialize and then subspecialize, if it's procedures essentially. So if you're surgery, you can do a procedure. Medical doctors, they can do a procedure. They can place like a stent in the blood vessels of the heart, things like that. They can
It could be
charge.
a pediatric cardiologist, right? Surgeon.
Yeah, it can be a pediatric cardiothoracic. Yeah, you can do that too.
And
Yeah.
that's so.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister is a pediatrician, a respirologist, who is a pediatrician, who is also a sleep specialist. I think that's like, so that's a couple subspecialties. So I'm familiar with that world. All right. We did not get a chance to answer all the questions, and we cannot. We're at 2 hours and 7 minutes now, right? There are still more questions. However, what I will promise is that we will save the questions. We know your names. If we did not get to you, we'll ask you to send us an email. We'll save it from what we have here and try to match your email and send you the email with the answer to the question. If I would advise, like, if you have any questions that you really would love to get answered, you can just email us at admin@aimonlineacademy.com, and we'll try to get those answers to you. If you want to do further work in your own career plan, in your own ideas of what you might do and which pathway is the best and where do I study and how do I get these scholarships, you can book a consultation with AIM. If you want to figure out your path, you can do a career map assessment. If you know that you're maybe somewhat interested in law and you want to see more, what is this all about? Am I really interested? What does court look like? What are the different things available and what's life like as a lawyer and as a law student? Then you can do pre-law boot camp. Matthew, ACE Academy, if you know that you're going to want to go down this path of doing USMLEs, and really see what your options are for studying locally and really practicing globally, then definitely you want to be in touch with Matthew Preston, who shared the details for ACE. We've shared the details for ACE Academy, and you can always set up with them. So again, your career journey does not stop here. We are here and excited to help you to develop those skills and get to your next steps. If you are interested in hearing more or setting up a meeting with Mr. Francis about the Cuban opportunities, he does have a company that offers services to students who want a kind of handholder through the process of applying, going to Cuba, studying in Cuba, etc. He'll help you to find housing, everything. It's a full service. So you can always be in touch about that. I want to thank everybody it's been incredible. It's over 2 hours and there's still over 100 people on this webinar. And that's a powerful indicator to me. That means that students who are interested in law and med in high school are just not getting enough support. And so we are definitely here to address that and here to support you. So we will be offering more opportunities for you to learn about these pathways, explore these pathways. And if you want to do a one-on-one on any of this and go a bit deeper, then we encourage you to book a consultation with us. You can do the career map assessment, as I said, or just book a regular consultation. Send us an email if there's anything else we can do for you. We appreciate you. No, Matthew, Hallie, Joshua, Craig, Sophie, thank you, because without you guys and your generosity with your time and just coming to just serve and to answer questions, and oh my gosh, I am so grateful. We are deeply grateful. Everybody who was here tonight, I know, benefited from the things that you were able to share, and you made a lot of things much clearer for folks. And we just appreciate you so much, and thank you for keeping it real and sharing your experience and helping to guide the path for so many people. We appreciate your presence here tonight. Thank you guys so much. Yay. So I want to thank everybody who joined us as well, our audience, our participants. Thank you to all the guidance counselors who shared this session. Thank you to all the folks who also shared this session with everybody that they knew. We appreciate you. And we hope you join us for next week's Wednesday webinar. We're having these webinars every Wednesday to help kids in high school to, find their paths and, win at life. And so we have a webinar next week, which is going to be all about mini productivity masterclass. It's all about helping kids to develop some of these self-management skills to get more effective at managing their lives, emotional intelligence, all of these different things. What are the systems it takes for students to win in high school and get prepared for success at life in any path they might choose? That's next week, Wednesday. Also a free webinar. So we'll email you about that. Once you registered for this, we have your email. So we will just keep sending you emails about our Wednesday webinars. So you don't need to worry about that. We'll send you an email. Ms. Bernard, you can just send us an email and we will be happy to share his email address. Mr. Francis, he was having some technical issues, so he had to leave us, unfortunately. But he's happy to answer questions. And so Janelle, I don't know if you have his email address, you could share it, or we need to ask his permission, but I'm sure he would because this is his business. But we could share his email address in the chat if we could. Thank you.
Yeah, hi Nicole, I'm actually back.
Oh, you're back.
And just so you know, because you don't know, I have an office right beside yours.
Oh, fantastic.
Your office is right beside mine at Unit.
That is true. West Kings House Road.
Right beside mine.
Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic.
So Janella has my details. I can share my number now.
Okay, please go ahead and give us your email or your number right now.
Number is 876-358-7300. Or they can email me at Craig, CRAIG, _, R_Francis at Yahoo.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll share that with everybody. All right, great. Yeah, so that means we are finished with our session today. Thank you guys so much for coming. I just shared again some more resources. And you're welcome, Daniel. We're glad to have you. And there's a webinar every Wednesday for the foreseeable future. We're going to be covering everything that teens need to really know to just get ready to win at life. And so just keep checking your email, keep checking our social media. Just want to thank you again so much for being here. Thank you again to our panelists. Without them, we could not have had this wealth of experience and expertise poured into our lives. So I'm just so deeply grateful for everybody. And thank you to Janelle. You did a beautiful job moderating for us today. I always throw you in the deep end, and I'm thrilled to see you when you swim beautifully. So thank you for just taking this on. This is one of many, and you did a great job. So AIM's Instagram, someone is asking about AIM's Instagram. AIM Online Academy is our Instagram handle. Feel free to follow us. It's gonna be a different link next week, although it might make sense for us to keep doing the same link. That's actually an idea. But it's a different link as of now for next week. And so we will be sure to, I don't know if you have that Zoom link yet in Zoom, Janelle. Not sure if it's there.
Not yet, but we can expect a follow-up email tomorrow with all the information that you could possibly need, as well as ways to contact us and about how we can help you going forward.
Okay, fantastic. The cost, someone is asking about the cost of the pre-law bootcamp for AIM. It's in person 5 days. It's 500, and is it 575 or 550? It's 500 and something. The fee is on the website. Janelle, do you know the fee?
The registration fee is $150. But
no, I'm not talking about for the consultation. I'm talking about for the boot camp. Right. 500 what?
$500.
Okay, it's actually 500 flat. Okay, so it's cheaper than I thought. So it's $500 flat. This is going to be a very high value program. It is modeled off. We have a lot of experience with summer programs, but it's just that they're all overseas. So we've been sending our kids on various summer programs throughout the world for the past 14 years. And then we saw that we didn't have any for our kids in Jamaica who want to stay and learn about these things in Jamaica, or for members of our diaspora who are bringing their kids back to Jamaica every single summer and would love to have a pre-professional program for them to do. So we're starting with our pre-law boot camp. It's modeled off the best in the world, and it's going to be really first class. And then we're also going to be doing pre-med boot camp and some other summer opportunities. So you are the first to know. You're the first to get access. Where, as I said, we only have space for about 20 kids. Because we're not trying to do like it's huge at first. We just want to do it small and do it really great. So so that's that. No, there are no scholarships for the boot camp. We have general scholarships that aim for college advising and SAT prep, but there are no scholarships for the boot camp at this time. Okay, does anybody okay, so everybody has everything that they need to take their next steps, and you can look out to hear from us in email. Anything else, Janelle, or have I done it all?
No, I think you've covered it all.
Fantastic. Oh, we did not cover it all because somebody's now asking, does AIM offer SAT? I came into this session assuming everybody knew what AIM was, and that has been a huge, I'm so sorry. I wanted to just jump in and get to the value of why people are care about better law. AIM Educational Services is a full service career and college prep company. And we also coach teens to improve their performance generally. So personalized performance amplification is what we call it. We're going to help teens to perform at a higher level in their lives. So what that means is we have SAT prep classes, one-on-one tutoring. We have no career map assessments with AIM Career Map. We have pre-law boot camp. And we also have one-on-one coaching for teens. Chelsea mentioned it as AIM Early. So what it is just helping teens to get more productive, get more focused. We have a specialized program for kids who have ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms. And that program starts in April as well. So we help kids to just manage themselves, manage their lives, get the results that they want, no matter what their goals are, as well as applying to college, getting scholarships for university, SAT prep, and understanding career pathways and what to do to get ready for them. So thank you for that question, Brianna. Did not realize that did not go into AIM. I'm sure our sales, our business coach would be very upset at our shoddy sales techniques tonight, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys got this intense value from our panelists today. And so again, thank you so much everyone for joining us. Thank you for the generosity with your time to our panelists. It's been a great session. We wish you all the best, and we hope to see you at AIM, where we can help you to prepare for an extraordinary life. Take care.